Just about to head into a client, and it's day 16 in January, and I've driven to Galway, and it was really nice to have some time in the car to reflect before I head in. And I always get a bit nervous. I've not met this client in person, we've met online, and it's one of my business clients. So yeah, excited for the session. So I get nervous too. And is that about nervousness, or is that about confidence? So it's about acknowledging that sometimes it's okay to be nervous, because I suppose it's a reminder that it means something. So I'll do another update later after the session, and I will share about what today's theme is. Hello again. Just before I drive back to Dublin, it was a really, really, really lovely session with my client. In fact, we had a deep chat at the end. She was asking me about what I did and how did I train and what I used to do before I became a coach, because she wouldn't have necessarily known. And it was just remembering a version of myself in the past that would have doubted that this could be my business and this is something that I could do all the time. So the confidence grows, if we were to stay the same and stay static, we don't grow. So it's so important to push ourselves out of the comfort zone, change our environment, and I think today that is the theme really. It's all around the environment and how once we change environments and how the environment can make us feel more or less confident. And I'll share a little bit about more of that when I get home, about really, really making sure that if you're in a tough environment that you have increased self-doubt, what you need to do to change that. And thanks so much, and I'll tell you a bit more in a while. I know you started watching yesterday's, and this is very much day 17. So a mix of the two together. I really listened to myself last night and took some time. I was very tired driving over and back to Galway. It takes its toll, and I talked to you all about self-compassion and not pushing through, and living some of that last night. And for you're watching back in, if this is in real time, you'll get it that it's the season of traitors, and I've just gotten into it. I'll blame a good friend of mine for telling me about it. Obviously this is psychological elements, but actually it's very fitting on the theme that I started talking about yesterday, and I am going to finish that out today. And that is about how the environments that we can be in, if they are an unhealthy system or an unhealthy environment, that can really get in on us and increase our self-doubt. So what do I mean by that? Obviously I talk about systems in places of work, places of school, organizations, or in our family. And these are patterns that are long established into these places before we ever arrive, including our families. And yet we find ourselves in these situations where we really doubt ourselves. So we've all worked in those places where we really seriously doubt ourselves, and we go from this confident or buoyant person into more and more crippling self-confidence issues. And often case, this is something happening around us that is totally outside of our control, but the people in there are all on edge. Everyone is watching their back, or they know that there's something within the system. And often case, when we look as a systemic coach, we often look at the founders and what was happening at the foundation of the company and what was going on. And sometimes it's the dynamics at play in the board or with it amongst other founders, people who left. Sometimes if there's a grand scale, like a redundancy, all those people left, right? There's a grief and there's a lack of remembering. So sometimes it's situations and stories that happened ever before you arrived that can really, really set and, let's say, plant those seeds of doubt within you. And also, if you have a manager who comes from their own unhealthy system, they can often bring those patterns and programs of play that can impact you. So if they have a disagreement with a family member and you are somebody who reminds them of that family member, sometimes you feel so unjustly that you've been called out, I'm bringing in cases of bullying or something, and again, it's nothing got to do with you, but it feels very personal. And I think that's where, again, somebody like me, a systemic coach, comes in and helps support you, resource you, brings you back to your confidence. And perhaps in that situation, it might be about leaving that environment because It is just not good for you and for your confidence. So, and many times we don't have, it's not every environment that we walk into and go, oh, I can't be here. Some environments we have to stay in and be in. So really it is about what's going to support me and what is within me that's triggering these situations. And this is where the support of a psychotherapist or a counselor and coach could really support you, right? So one is looking back at what has happened in the past. Again, the systemic coach can do both, but works even better if you are doing that in conjunction with a therapist. So you start with therapy and then you move into the systemic coaching that can honor all that work that you've done with them, but also start stepping into more of your power and more of creation space and more of the manifesting space and really creating something new. So in another video in next week, I'm going to start talking a bit more about endings and beginnings and everything in between. So we fall into these cycles and patterns just like nature, a beginning, an ending, and again, what's in the middle. And sometimes, some of our patterns might be the beginnings are very hard, where we doubt ourselves because it's all out of our comfort zone, and equally an ending where it's grief and there's a death and a loneliness to what we might be leaving behind. And that can really, really, again, eat in our confidence. I'll talk a little bit more about that next week. But really, this week has been a big recap on everything confidence, and we've gone a little bit deeper. I've shared my own stories this week on times where I would have had increased self-doubt and low self-confidence and what I did to get back there. And that, again, when we see other people and we compare ourselves to others, often case we feel that, oh well, they're so confident, they're so confident all the time, they would never have any problems. And I think this week was just to show that everybody at some point in their life has a moment, if not a daily moment, where they doubt themselves. And again, no matter who I work with from all levels in life and all spectrums and all nationalities, I've never met anyone, man or woman, that has that a really, 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 really robust confidence all the time. So it's something that will ebb and flow in our lives. And when we're in a growth phase or a transition phase, which I would work a lot of people, and that's when it's really, really magnetized, and that self-doubt is really, really at a high level, and that's where you need support. You can't do that on your own. And then if it's the day-to-day low levels of self-confidence, again, something will support. But where there's an ebb and a flow and a doubt, just sitting with it and actually, what I talked about during the week, like what's the primary emotion behind that? Like what's really going on here? Are you afraid of something? What are you afraid of? Calling it out, acknowledging what it is. So that's a roundup of day 16 and day 17, and it's really all about today, the environment that you are in where there might be increased self-doubt, and how to get the support and resource yourself, and also where there is a possibility of control, where the environment may not be serving you anymore. What can you do to transition out of that? And it might not be something that you do immediately, so you're going to need some support to stay there and remind your body that it's okay to feel safe. So that's it. Thank you. We will hopefully catch up on the rest of your playlist this weekend, or if you haven't, and I will be back on Monday. Have a lovely weekend, and if you're enjoying Traitors, we've got another episode tonight, and I hope you go gently. See you next week.